Clark Lea has effectively revamped the offensive line through the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like you want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On today's episode, I got 5 on it. We'll explore some storylines for Vandy football. We saw Clark Lea utilize the portal and get some great players, but most importantly, he's effectively revamped the offensive line, and this has been really, really good. Now, before we really dive into that, here you go right here. He is totally revamped this offensive line. It is absolutely amazing. And he was able to bring in, so we have to identify the problem, right? And the problem was that this offensive line was just abysmal in a 2-10 season. They were just pitiful. Like, it almost seemed like they weren't together as a unit. They didn't really have much of an identity. The offense didn't really have much of identity, and that's not necessarily me downgrading the talent on the team. I don't think they were set up very well a year ago. But this offseason, I think Vandy recognized the problem, lost a few guys in the portal, have a few guys coming back that are going to compete for starting roles, and you bring in 4 really good players to add to that depth and to add to the competition in that unit. You get a new coach in Chris Kleenakis as well to go along with your new scheme, your new identity, your 4 new pieces, and just a whole new way of doing business on the offensive line. And it's going to be great. They are complete. I think they're revamped. I think there's some room to add some more depth down the road, but I think we're at a really good starting point right now. And when you look at the offensive line, I mean, I think you look at the projected starters, right? So you have to think, when you look at this offensive line, you have to think Gunnar Hansen. He played left tackle last year. You have to think he has a really good shot of holding on to that. If not, he could move down into the guard position. Mizell Sandoval also looked to factor in at one of the guard spots. Gage Pitchford, who was hurt most of, or actually all of the spring, will look to factor in as well. Grayson Morgan, somebody who has had a back injury that also kept him out of spring practice, also factors in. I mean, this when I say this race is wide open, I mean it is wide open. They have completely started over with this whole thing. I absolutely love the 4 guys that came in. I think Stephen Lasoya factors in possibly at center. Chase Mitchell, I think, factors in at one of the tackle spots. Stephen Hubbard and Cade McConnell will provide some depth. They'll also have a shot at a starting position as well. I think they all do. But I think despite all of that, if there's injuries, if there's guys that just aren't factoring in or just aren't quite getting it, I think the overall theme here is you have the depth, okay? You have the depth. And, you have – and I even left out Delphine Xavier Castillo. He's a senior, 6'5", about 3 – probably going to play about 350, 355 or so. He looks to factor into probably on the interior somewhere. Again, I'm excited to see when they're going through fall camp, as they go through the scrimmages, how this offensive line shakes out, because whichever crew you have, I think you have, let's see, you have the four transfers, plus you have Grayson Morgan. Then you have Mizell Sandoval, Gunnar Hansen, and then that's 7 guys right there that I think could play at the could easily start at any of these spots. And then you have some of the young guys too that are going to develop behind them. But I think those are the 7 biggest factors there because these other guys come from big programs and things like that. So why is it important? Okay, so this was probably in the SEC. Okay, this is obviously, and you look at any team, offensive line and line play is the most important aspect of any team when you're evaluating. So that goes without saying. But the importance of line play, especially in the SEC, is paramount, right? Because that's where, in this league, that's where the games are won and lost. Everybody's got great skill guys. Everyone has great linebackers. Everyone has great quarterbacks. Everybody has all of that. But what it comes down to is the line play, both offense and defense. If you can get great line play out of both of those units, your team is going to be really good. And that's where the games are won and lost, because that's where the beasts are. That's where the big 6'8", 320-pound behemoths that move like basketball players, that have great feet and are agile. That's where the difference is made, right? When you look at the wins and losses, they were all won in the trenches. They were all teams that were able to run the ball and protect the quarterback. And it doesn't matter who you have at receiver. If you have a terrible offensive line, your quarterback's not going to be able to get the ball out. So the offensive line, albeit never is the star of the show, like if you weren't a football junkie, you probably couldn't name any of the starting offensive linemen on this team. Those of you that are football junkies could probably project out the entire starting 5, and then there's everybody else kind of in between where like you might know one guy or the other. But usually if you know an offensive lineman, typically, unfortunately, that's a bad thing, right? Because they're the ones getting beat. They're the ones getting holding calls. They're the ones not getting any recognition unless there's something bad. Now, with highlight film, with highlight tapes and things like that, and I think there's some things out there in social media that are giving more love to the offensive line, which is a great thing, by the way. You're starting to see lineman highlights out there like Pancake of the Week and things like that, where I think there's some great. I think Pancake Pantry has a phenomenal NIL opportunity with Vanderbilt where they can sponsor the offensive line, the Pancake Pantry. And because it's right around the corner from campus, offensive line, get pancakes, all that good stuff, right? So this group affects everything, right? You can have a great quarterback, and Pavia is going to be as good as the next guy. He's already highly regarded in the league. But if you can't protect him, he can't do his thing throwing down the field. If you can't create running lanes for him, he can't do things in the run game that he was brought in to do. Or these running backs can't do things in the run game that they were either brought in to do or scheme-wise schemed to do, right? So that's why this is important. That's why getting the right mix of the right 5 is important. That's why using the portal to bring in these guys to add depth and to add competition was important. Now, the rest of the depth is relatively unknown. So you got 7 to 8 guys in there that factor in, obviously, and that will rotate. You have 2 interior rotators and a tackle rotator, possibly a third tackle rotator. But for the most part, you're sitting there with about 8 guys, which is okay. I think it's a great start, and I think you have some guys down in the pipeline that are also developing. But for the most part, you still need to add that depth, and they will still, for the next probably 3-4 years, hit the portal hard on the offensive line. I think you need at least 10 guys 10 starter quality guys to feel good about your depth at offensive line, because injuries happen. No matter how good your strength and conditioning is, football's a violent game. Injuries happen. So this excites me that Clark Lea has effectively used the portal, because Vandy has never really been a factor in the transfer portal since it became a thing. They got like 3 guys last year. Now they brought in 22 transfers, which 4 of them are offensive linemen, 4 of them are baller type offensive linemen, guys that will factor in big time, and guys that will play and be something. So I'm excited about it, man. I think this is a great deal. I think you're going to see a much improved offensive line under new leadership. AJ Blazik was really good. I don't think he was set up very well, but he's doing his thing up in Wisconsin. I think Chris Klenakis was a really, really good replacement hire there. I think he fits with Tim Beck a lot better with the direction of what Vandy wants to do on offense. And again, a revamped group. They use the portal. So there's also some special guys. Speaking of using the portal, Micah Bell, dude, don't sleep on him. He's going to be a special guy. Stay tuned. This episode's brought to you by FanDuel. And you know what? I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But you know what? FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. And you know what? All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers. That's right. You, me, and everybody, all of us, all customers, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Let me say it again. You're going to head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, welcome back. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN? You tired of all that shouting? You have to turn the volume down on your TV because of it? Well, you need to make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So, speaking of which, thank you to the everydayers. Thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. I hope you guys enjoy what you are hearing and what you are seeing. If you do, at Locked On Vandy, go give that a follow on all social media platforms. Again, we're trucking right along. The subscriptions are starting to go back up a little bit. So make sure as you're getting in tune with football, as we get closer to the season, give us a like, give us subscribe. Look, man, I'm a football guy. You're going to get all the football talk you want. And there's probably going to be times where I lose you because I go into the weeds about something. I'm a high school football coach, or was. And that's just part of what I do. So occasionally I might leave you in the dust. I don't know. But I think you'll enjoy what you see. Anyway, I got 5 on it. Okay. There's a 90s rap song that inspired the title of this type of segment that I'm doing, or this type of episode. So go Google that song, by the way. I got 5 on it. It's a great song. I love the song. All right. So we talked about the use of the portal to revamp the offensive line. Tremendous deal. Even though the depth still needs to be built, I think there's a really good 7 or 8 guys that can factor in to making Vandy's season as successful as it can be. Another guy that was brought in through the portal that I think will be really special, and that I think shows that Vandy has kind of almost revamped itself and revamped its portal usage, and kind of, I guess, the phrase adapt or die. They chose adapt and not die, so that's a really good thing. But I think Micah Bell is going to be a very, very special player. And if you don't know Micah Bell, he was a corner at Notre Dame. and he comes over, accepts a position change, or probably came to Vandy because Vandy was the only school that was allowing him to change. Maybe he wanted to change. I don't know the exact details of the change, but nonetheless, I think it's a really, really good thing because he's going to be a special player, right? He's going to be a threat. He's going to be a threat vertically. He's going to be a threat horizontally. He's going to be a threat in special teams. I think he's going to be kind of a Swiss Army knife a little bit. And I think he's going to kind of add a dimension to this offense that will help make it more explosive, whether it's jet sweep, quick screens, or even vertical down the field. I think this guy can do it all. And he's excited about it as well. He's got a lot of ability. He's got he's played the cornerback position at Notre Dame, so he kind of understands from that aspect how he attacks whoever's covering him with whatever coverage it is. He knows what the coverage is about. He knows the leverage. He knows stance. He knows body posture, eyes. He knows what gives every coverage fits because he's been on the other side of it. He's had those things done to him. He's had different routes run on him. He's had receivers attack his leverage in different ways. He's had receivers set him up. He's had the whole gamut of things from the defensive perspective, plays that he's had to defend. Now he's taking that knowledge and he's taking those skill sets and he's going to flip it over and be able to formulate his attack much, much more effectively. And he's a vertical threat and he's a fast guy. And I think nobody's really coming out and saying it, but I don't think anybody's really talking about special teams anyway like that. But look for Micah Bell to be a factor on special teams. That's right. Look for him to be a factor on special teams. Okay. So I'm excited. And Micah Bell will be a factor. He'll be a factor in the vertical game. He'll be a factor in the run game. Speaking of the run game, well, who's going to give him the ball? Well, Diego Pavia is going to be the guy. Nate Johnson may be a little bit too, but I got 5 on it, right? Takes us to our third point. Quarterbacks are a big factor in the run game. Okay, why do I say that? Why do I say they're a big factor in the run game? We know they're going to run a little bit, right? They got these athletic guys. They moved on from the drop back guys that can run if they had to, but don't usually choose to. But now they get these guys that can legitimately run. Like Diego Pavia is a really good downhill runner. He understands how to set up defenders in a double option game. He understands just kind of how to sift through the pile and get and maximize his yardage. And he's a tough dude, right? He's a tough dude. So quarterbacks are going to be a factor in the run game. And Nate Johnson is just freaking electric. You saw him. If you want to see his running ability at full capacity, flip on that Florida-Utah game from last year and watch what Nate Johnson did to Florida. That's an SEC team. Utah will probably win the Big 12 this year, but nonetheless, he can make it happen, and he's very, very explosive. So if something happens to Pavia, or if they have some packages or a package of plays for Nate Johnson, whatever the case may be, if Nate Johnson finds himself on the field, he's a dynamic guy. But part of that is the quarterbacks having that understanding of how to set up defenders and just kind of how that happens. So does that really say how they factor in? No. Here's how they factor in. By them being successful, by them having these particular skill sets and the ability to manipulate defenders by prolonging the mesh point or things like that, using eyes to be deceptive, using the RPO game, understanding when to pull the ball and throw it, and understanding just kind of how to, it doesn't just go rest on their running ability, but their ability to manipulate defenses will help the 5 guys up front. tremendously, just as much as the 5 guys up front blocking successfully will allow the quarterbacks to do their thing. Will the quarterbacks in the quarterbacks doing their thing in turn returns the favor to the offensive line, makes it easier. They're blocking lighter boxes. They are not seeing as much blitz because teams are having to play base coverages and base defenses. They're not getting as complex of defensive schemes up front as they probably normally would, or as they probably did last year when teams would just throw the kitchen sink at them and say, you're going to have to stop us, and you really can't. So I think the quarterbacks doing their thing will help that as well. So, again, they'll be a big factor if they can effectively get yardage, if they can effectively create explosives either with their own legs or the threat of their legs and manipulating linebackers with their eyes and positioning with the mesh point. If they can do that effectively, then they will create lanes. They will create favorable matchups for the offensive linemen where they're not having 2 or 3 guys come through their gap. Running backs will be a little bit more successful. They'll be able to get guys in space better, and the whole offense will just flow better if the quarterbacks are able to and allowed to do what they were brought in to do, which is be a factor in the run game, whether they're directly running or not. That's what that means. They're going to affect the game by just the threat of them running, the threat of them throwing, the threat of just not knowing what the heck they're doing. As from a defensive perspective, that is. So that's how they factor in. So the question is there really any star power on this team? Well, when you look at star possibilities, Langston Patterson will be a star. There's no doubt about that. We'll talk about that next. Passion, drive, patience. That's right. You had to have patience to listen to that. All right. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, as we wind down here, we got a couple more storylines in our I Got 5 on It episode. Thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Thank you to the everydayers. Without you guys, none of this is possible. Make sure you check out Locked On SEC next or Locked On Sports Today. You could also check that out too. Not a bad deal. So anyway, I got 5 on it, man. And one of the things that I know is that Langston Patterson will be a star. He's going to be an absolute star, okay? In a defense that is craving star power, okay? In a defense that's looking for somebody to just take the bull, the idiom, take the bull by the horns. They're looking for that at Vandy. Clark Lea is looking for that dominant figure, and I think Langston Patterson will be that guy. And that dominant figure, there's usually 2 guys on a defense that you would say, I think that is mandatory, that you need at least 2 stars on your defense. Now, obviously, you want 11 stars, okay? Then you get the Georgia Bulldogs from 2021 where they had, 5 guys drafted off that defense in the first round. That was insane. That was absolutely insane. Vandy's not going to have that. No one burst your bubble there. But Langston Patterson will be a star at linebacker. None the less. Okay. He is somebody that I think with his intelligence and his athletic ability will be a combo that will allow him to make a ton of tackles. And he's somebody that in this defense will be able to run and be able to scrape to the C gap, because I think Clark Lea, in a perfect world, will keep the A gaps and B gaps occupied with his defensive linemen for the most part. Now, that's not going to be the case every time, but I think you're going to see schemes that allow these athletic linebackers to do what they do best, and that's to play inside out, and that's to scrape over the top and be able to kind of create B to C gap pressure on offenses, to where those linemen are really going to have to take these hard angles, these tough angles, these difficult angles to get cut off these linebackers. I think you're going to see more free flowing stuff because these defensive linemen are going to move. They're going to disrupt a lot of things. They're going to free up Langston Patterson and, of course, Prince Collie as well, who was a portal addition a year ago, who did really well in this defense, by the way. Despite the record, despite the points allowed, I think there was some individual success within this defense. Prince Collie was one of them. But back to Patterson, I think he has the makeup. I think he has everything you need to be a star. He has the instincts, he has the toughness, and he has the tackling ability. And I think he'll be really good in space. Now, his coverage ability, I will be honest and say I have no idea in the pass game how he's going to be coverage-wise. I don't know if he's ever going to be required to defend a running back in man coverage or to defend a tight end. Clark Lea likes to take some chances with his defense and with his inside linebackers. So there's a possibility that you might see that at some point and probably be scratching your head going, oh boy, I don't like this matchup. But Langston Patterson probably can handle it. I don't know for sure. I don't want to pretend like I know on that one. I just want to see it happen. I don't think it's going to happen frequently enough to where we have to really kind of get you ready for it and really diagnose is he able to do this? But he's going to have to be able to do it at some point. He's going to be called upon to do it at some point, because there's going to be some case where a team comes out in an empty formation and he's going to be left to cover somebody, because he's probably a better option than Prince Collie at coverage. That'll all be ironed out in training camp, I'm sure. With Clark Lea, he's going to leave no stone unturned here now that he's completely in charge of the defense. And they have an identity too. So Langston Patterson is going to be an absolute stud. And I'm here for it because I think this is what this defense needs. So, and lastly, I got 5 on it. In the midst of Austin Howard committing to Mississippi State, go ahead and boo real quick. Carson Lawrence and Vanzale Hinton, do they remain solid? I hope so. I think Hinton and Lawrence have both kind of given you an indication that they believe that they're solid. And as of right now, I believe it too. I think especially with Lawrence, I think there's something to it. Now, I think Virginia Tech has done a tremendous job recruiting him. But I think with him being at McCallie, being in Chattanooga, which is not far from Nashville, and they play a lot of their games in Nashville, given the fact that they're in Division II AAA, and a lot of their schedule is against Nashville teams. I think their family enjoys going to Nashville. I think he enjoys playing in Nashville, and I think there's a kind of a pressure. I don't know that it's coming from anybody except maybe he's applying it to himself, but I think there's something inside of him telling him, hey, you need to do this for Nashville, right? As Nashville continues to be put on the map in other areas of life, like it's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. It's one of the hottest job markets. It feels like 1 million new people coming in every day. Traffic has certainly gotten worse. There's a new Titan Stadium coming, which will ultimately lead to Final Fours and World Cup and Super Bowls and all kind of things. the Titans. There's a push to bring a Major League Baseball team in, possibly even an NBA team. So like Nashville's starting to get into like major city status, and that's a big deal. And so Vanderbilt will likely, and it seems like they've kind of recognized that already. Nashville's also a healthcare capital of the country too. But Vandy has kind of realized, hey, Vandy's booming. Why can't we get more recruits? Well, we got to be active in the transfer portal. We got to actually utilize NIL. So there you have it. But anyway, I think those two are solid right now. I thought Howard was solid, but you never know until you know. That's the recruiting game now. You can't dwell on it. And, I think with Howard, you just got to you just keep recruiting him because, at some point he's going to realize that Mississippi State is a worse situation than Vandy. And he went there because his friend committed. I'm sure he liked the school, and I'm sure he liked what was said. I'm sure he liked Jeff Lebby because Jeff Lebby's a good coach. But I think ultimately his gut instinct was to commit to Vandy. And at some point he's going to look and go, maybe I should have went with my gut. We'll see. Time will tell. But you don't want to burn that bridge. I don't think you should burn that bridge. I don't think it's a good idea to burn that bridge. I think wherever he lands, you wish it was Vandy, but he will do well at Mississippi State. I don't know that he will like Mississippi State once he finally kind of gets ingrained there, because I don't know. It's not Nashville. I just don't think he will enjoy it. I think sometimes going with your friends is not always the best move. I think you got to do what's best for you. His gut instinct was Vanderbilt. He felt comfortable at Vanderbilt. He felt comfortable enough to commit and to recruit for the school. Also, he was recruiting these recruits. To each his own. I wish him nothing but the best. This is no ill will whatsoever. This is me just trying to figure out what he was thinking and figure out what he might be thinking in the future. But Austin, you're always welcome at Vanderbilt. If you change your mind at any point, it's okay. You can come on back. No worries. But we're going to leave you there. We're going to leave it there. We hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll be back at you tomorrow. And until then, anchor down.